On behalf of the Center for Media and Celebrity Studies, our views have been covered in a wide range of media, including The Telegraph, Vice, Flair, Chatelaine, Yahoo Entertainment, Voyage LA in Los Angeles, and Hollywood North Magazine. We're so thankful for this broadcast today. A huge thanks to the Animal Safe Movement, the Health Safe Movement, and Climate Safe Movement for supporting this talk series. Our question is, can a celebrity get you to watch The Dominion? We have fantastic guests today. We're so honored to have them with us. I'll let Mary Fantasky, my co-host, introduce herself and the panelists.
Thank you, Samita. My name is Mary Fantasky. I did my bachelor's in sociology while I was doing my last year and applying for my master's. I became ill with a genetic illness, and it opened my eyes to the idea of disability rights and how that connects to veganism. In my first year of university, I went and worked at Farm Sanctuary, and that's when I became a vegan. So I had been a vegan for a few years when I became ill, and so the connections to me were very obvious between animal rights and human rights and disability rights. And so I started writing some papers on that. That is when I finished my thesis eventually. I'm just waiting for a surgery. That is what I want to do my thesis on, and how intersectionality can really strengthen a movement. And that's part of what I'm interested in celebrity culture, is the idea of representation, vegan representation, widespread, diverse vegan representation, and why that is important. But I'll pass it on to our lovely panelists. Ace, I don't know if you want to introduce yourself. You can go ahead. Just tell us a bit about you and your work. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ace. I work as a professional model for Elite, but I also have a former previous life of sports, and I've been an athlete for most of my younger years in track and field, and I was swimming for 8 years. So I have education on the university in sports nutrition and in sports injuries, and it makes me have a good connection, or a strong connection, when it comes to diet and when it comes to lifestyle and all this kind. It's a big passion for me. So during my time here, I just to start, but I've been vegan for at least 3 years now. Before I was vegetarian, but I took a step one day to another, and I just broke it and continue. It was a step for me, and like you said before, it was absolutely, because I work in the beauty industry, and it's a lot of makeup all the time, and you start thinking about all these kind of animals you have that have to go through all these tests because I have to look this way. And I come to think of it more and more, and I'm raised up and born in the countryside, and I felt that no more, and I start digging into and I start choosing the other products, and I start searching myself, and I'm a big animal lover, so and that's my biggest point. I don't work so much when it comes to out of the field with animals because I really want to, but my field is more maybe to be a represent outer when it comes in my fashion industry, or where I'm out to influence people the way I can do when it comes to nutrition, or how to do in the makeup, or all these kind of products that actually are on the market right now. So that's my field.
Thank you, Ace.
Sorry. Thank you, Ace. Patrick, if you want to introduce yourself a bit about your vegan journey and your current work, that would be fabulous. Thank you.
Absolutely. It would be my pleasure. Thank you for having me here today. It's great to talk about this with all of you. So I have been vegan for about 12 years now here in Los Angeles. And I came to that through my meditation and spiritual practice. When I really started that really intensely, the teachers that I trained with, one of them told me, if you want to take this seriously, you have to stop eating animals. And I thought that made perfect sense to me. And so I went vegetarian, and I felt so good, so immediately, that it actually put me into a weird little mini depression for like about a month, where I thought I could have been feeling this good for my entire life. And I kind of was sad for all the years I hadn't been vegetarian. So I immediately went vegan, never looked back. And for me personally, I don't miss any of that lifestyle at all. Veganism has just been absolutely brilliant for me. And so as part of that, as part of my veganism and my spiritual practice, at the time I was and am a photographer here in Los Angeles. And I started shifting the way I would create my art and run my business. And I started realizing that I didn't want to just work with anybody. I didn't want any random model showing up or working with makeup that was like animal products. And so much of the industry was in conflict with my natural, vibration, how I wanted to live. And I figured, this is my life. This is my business. I'm the one deciding how I get to live. And so I decided that I would start working with people whose vibration and values aligned with mine. So I started only working with vegan models, vegan makeup artists, for clients even that were conscious clients. So on a really blunt level, vegan fashion designers. But then even more loosely and more generally, anything that's sustainable fashion, anything that's like conscious. So even companies or organizations that are doing genuine recycling and upcycling of clothing. So basically, I decided we should start a conscious model agency. And not only would we represent models that were on plant-based diets and living conscious lifestyles, but we would exclusively only work with clients that were elevating their industry somehow and like having some sort of conscious aspect to their business. And that brings us to today.
Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you, Patrick. I have so many questions about your meditation journey, especially since mindfulness is something that's important to me, but we have to introduce our last panel guest, which is Jane. Would you like to introduce yourself, your vegan journey, and your work today? Thank you.
Sure. My name is Jane Velez-Mitchell. I'm a journalist and author. I was in the news media for 38 years as a reporter on television, a news anchor, and a TV host. Formerly had a show on CNN Headline News, HLN. Then after I left that, I started my own nonprofit, JaneUnchained.com. And we do live, Facebook Live. It's a team effort. We have more than 70 volunteer contributors who go live around the world at, under normal circumstances, veg fests, conferences, vigils, protests, marches, demonstrations. We now have a bunch of shows in COVID. Our top contributors have their own shows where they use StreamYard, this exact platform, to interview key movers and shakers in the vegan animal rights space. We also do TV shows on Amazon Prime. We have a documentary on Dr. Silas Rao of climate healers, and that is called Countdown to Year Zero on Amazon Prime. Basically explains why we have to convert to a vegan world by 2026, or we are going to have an ecological apocalypse that could make life uninhabitable for all living beings. So I would check that out, Countdown to Year Zero. And we also have a whole series of vegan cooking shows that are on Amazon Prime, New Day, New Chef, and New Day New Chef Support and Feed, where we work with Maggie Baird, who's Billie Eilish's mom, who is raising funds to give to vegan restaurants, to make vegan food, to give to hungry people so that they're getting nutritious food. And that's also on public television stations around the United States. And I've been vegan about 25 years. Howard Lyman, the Mad Cowboy, I interviewed him when I was a local news anchor, and he turned me vegan on the spot during that interview, and I've never looked back.
Fantastic, Jane. Like Mary, I have so many questions, and I know time is going to fly. I'm super excited to know more about your work. One of the questions that I had last time, and I'm going to ask again, do you think that mainstream media or celebrity activism is relevant to the kind of work that you do?
For me?
For everybody. We're going to start. Who wants to go first? Ace?
I'll jump in because I have an answer to that because I wasn't.
Sure. Go ahead.
One of the reasons I started my nonprofit, Jane on Chain News Network, is that mainstream media does not tell the truth on the subject of animal agriculture. And all you have to do is look at the TV commercials to figure out why. Primarily fast food and pharmaceuticals, the two industries that would collapse if people woke up and went plant-based and got healthy. And so it's frustrating. Even during the pandemic, are they talking about the fact that this is a zoonotic illness? Even though initial reports obviously talked about the fact that it first cropped up amongst those who had visited a wet slaughter market, a slaughterhouse in China, suddenly that was tamped down and all these conspiracy theories about a lab, blah, blah, blah. This is a zoonotic illness. They will not talk about the connection between animal abuse and this pandemic. They won't talk about how to prevent future pandemics. They only talk about how we're going to treat future pandemics. So this is why we need to do an end run around mainstream media. They are carnist. They are prejudiced against this issue. Unfortunately, I mean, I see it over and over. There are rare exceptions. Jim Cramer on CNBC has started to sound like an animal rights activist the way he promotes Beyond Meat, saying there's a problem with animal agriculture and it's the cow, and saying all sorts of things that are really, I think, fantastic. But with rare exceptions, Mark Cuban has gone vegetarian and he promotes vegan products that come on Shark Tank. But with rare exception, I mean, overall, this is why we need to use social media, because they're not telling the story.
I totally agree. I mean, I'm a certified broadcast journalist, and I have been trained to write news scripts and, talk about the weather and all kinds of entertainment. But I really felt it was very filtered. It was literally pushing a certain propaganda, and I didn't have I had any voice there. And, my research allowed me to do a lot of investigative journalism and look into undercover footage. And I'm really proud that, we have our own organizations to show different points of view, because mainstream media doesn't allow that. But at the same time, like you said, Jane, social media has the capacity to reach out to the mass that needs to know the facts. I mean, they need to be educated on what's going on with the environment, with the animals. I mean, everything that is not talked about in mainstream media, social media does have the capacity to share that. So I'm really proud of you, Jane, what you're doing. It's really powerful. And you have your cooking show on Amazon Prime. Congratulations on that. That's recent news. That's really powerful. Who would like to comment on this next? The question is, how is mainstream media or celebrity activism, which is a part of media activism, relevant to the work that you do? So I know Patrick and Ace, you both work in fashion modeling. What would you say on this? Is mainstream media relevant to the work you do?
I think it very much is relevant. I mean, of course, it is system of our culture where as a collective we share ideas. You know, this is effectively what media is as we're speaking of it. And one of the kind of short, quick little quips that I keep in my head when I'm working on LoveLight models and kind of changing the value set and perspective of clients as we try and promote veganism and higher consciousness in business is I remind people, I'm like, if you really want to tap into mainstream media, if you really want to play at the game that they've created, you have to remember that we need to make veganism and any sort of activism. And the way I tell it to my customers when we're speaking about it is at some point you have to remember we have to make vegan fashion cool and sexy, because that's what the middle of the bell curve consumes. That's what they want. That's what mainstream media feeds them. That's how mainstream media makes its money, by, getting the most viewers possible. So they spoon feed the content they know the people want to see to the people that want to consume it. And you aren't going to be able to compete with that kind of media machine if your content and your subject matter, if your values, if your idea doesn't have some aspect of being cool and sexy. And by that, I don't mean just like superficially. I mean, it has to be professional and real. Similarly to when your friend has a band and they play you their CD, you can hear immediately whether it sounds like all the music you hear out in the world, all of the professional music you hear, or whether your friend's band sounds like he's just some guy in the garage with his guitar. It's like, you're not going to compete. You can't compete unless what you are talking about and what you are sharing with people is on a similar level, media-wise, visually, intellectually, in its entire presentation. So I think there is a beautiful aspect of social media allowing us access to people. But at the same time, mainstream public's bar for what they consider to be content worth their attention is set really high by, these billion, $1 trillion industries and the amount of money they have to spend on the content they get to share with the mainstream public.
So really and truly what we're talking about is the mass public. The reason why mainstream media is so important is because the access that they have to the mass. And what's really challenging is the kind of filtered information that they have. And we get caught into debates, and the problem with pretty much all social issues is categorization. We have, as humans, we have this power of, being rational. And as much as rationality is key for progress, it also has the capacity to categorize us and to discriminate us. And that's what we have in mainstream media. But based on all my research, what's really key to bringing social change is arts, and specifically like aesthetic communication and the use of visual storytelling. So based on all my research and my observation, what I realized is pretty much what you're saying, Patrick, is the use of fashion and overall style. So just a couple of years ago, I had the honor and privilege to host the 8th conference in Lisbon on behalf of the Center for Media and Celebrity Studies. And it was all about ethical fashion. And it included vegan fashion, talked about fair trade, labor, everything. And that conference led to this book. And those who are watching our live stream today has the privilege to know a little secret. This book is called Ethical Glamour and Fashion Styling Persona Brand. And the dress that you see here, That's the dress that I'm wearing right now. And I'm so proud of all our authors who have talked about the value of vegan fashion and, using an ethical style overall. So that's what I would really push for, is using that kind of art. It's something that everybody could do, just like eating food. Fashion has a lot of power. What would you say, Ace? You are a world fashion model. You are Mrs. World, Sweden. What would you say about the power of fashion when it comes to social change?
I think, it's huge when we come to the platform you have out there, and you should be really smart to use it. I mean, they use it, and you just use their tools to get out what you want. And we have all these kind of celebrities out there, and they get the good brands. And those brands pays the influencer a lot of money for having this kind of, call it sponsorship, or they sign the contract. On our side, when we try to fight this battle to get our, call it a lifestyle out there, to spread it out to so many people we have to be smart. And I think when it comes to be an influencer, or when it comes to be a model, or whatever you work in this industry, you have, how should I say it, you have to be wise when you start that, because everything is not about money. If you want to go with this and you want to be a represent for this, you have to do it by heart. It's nothing else to it. And it's a huge mass out there with a lot of young people, and they look up at everything they see out there. They absorb everything. And it's just an amazing tool to use, and you use it wisely. And I think you can go far with this. I just work, not only in the beauty and the fashion and go and do beauty pageants and fashion shows, but at the same time, I work with the fitness industry. So it's the same thing there. People want to lose weight, this and that, and they got in all kind of different diets, and diets for them, it's like, they have to lose weight when doing some, horrible stuff to their bodies, and simply use this kind of just lifestyle to go plant-based. You never have to think about what kind of calories it's intake and out of, and be crazy about it. We have a huge amazing time in front of us, and can we just grab a spot there and put the foot in? You can do a lot. And then, like Patrick said, when it comes to this, we have to get it more sexy or whatever. I think that's absolutely great, because that's actually is true. You have to attract them in any way. And it's always been like that from the ages of time, that beauty and everything that has to do with that have always been something that people have looked up to, or something attire that people have even if the tribe since ages of time. So this is nothing new. It's nothing new. It's just that we have to use the same signals out there. I remember it was a woman that she works still in the fitness industry. She worked with this strong is a new fitness, or fitness is the new strong. I mean, this is the same thing. Strong is the new sexy, and this is the same thing with this. Also, vegan is the new sexy. So use it as much as you can. And when it comes to the influencers, you have to be, I think you have to be smart. Don't go for the big, signing up for the big country. No, you're selling yourself. You're selling yourself, because it's not, you cannot be vegan and sign up for the contract for doing all kind of chemicals and tests on animals. You can't, it's not, you're not pure. You're not pure. And I think it's very, very important when you're out there to be honest on who you are, what you stand for, because people are looking up at you all the time. And like Patrick said, you have to use all the platforms you have out there. is a strong base to stand on. So I don't know more to say about it, but it's like the fashion industry is big, and the influences are many out there. But they're saying almost the same thing, almost. And when it comes to vegan and plant-based, you have to maybe change your niche a little bit. And what Patrick doing is absolutely taking a step further when it comes to the industry to make everything in a whole package and apply it to clients in that way, so they can choose something that are not, have any sort of negative impact on the environment or on the animals or whatsoever, and people are going to think of that in the future. And even they do so now. So, can just say applaud to you, Patrick. Good work.
Thank you, Ace. You just had me thinking about the fashion industry. And one thing I noticed even as a kid, is the way that fur has come in and out of fashion. And, I remember, when I was younger, fur was not a thing anymore. Like PETA, as much as I have some criticisms of PETA, they really did some great campaigning and got rid of fur. And then we're seeing it come back into fashion a little bit with the fur trim. And I was just wondering if if any of you, but particularly Ace or Patrick, just because fashion is your domain, if you wanted to speak on what you have noticed in terms of trends and veganism and, especially I'm thinking of fur, but also cruelty-free makeup, and how it's sort of become in and out of vogue. I was just wondering if you wanted to speak to what you have noticed when it comes to the trends of, it almost seems like sometimes cruelty-free is in vogue and sometimes it's not. And I was wondering if either one of you wanted to speak to that and how it's affected your work.
Yes, that's an excellent point, an excellent observation. And I do have some ideas on it. And I am a talker, so you guys have to cut me off. I will just, this is such a great soapbox with like-minded people. I'm like, yeah, let's tell everybody about all this vegan stuff. So to get back on track. So I went to art school. So my degree is in art, in graphic design. So I'm wholly not qualified to speak about some of these things, but I have ideas about them anyway. And this is one that I think that I've seen. This is what I've experienced. I feel like there's a reoccurring capitalist wave that happens where, let's take your example about fur. Fur was popular, and then through efforts like PETA and the industry as a whole, it dropped out of popularity. We saw fur come crashing down and we were all very excited. But then you're right, there was this resurgence. And I think this happens in just about any capitalist system, because when there's that dip, oh, there's no more fur, fur's not trendy, there will be some capitalist out there who's oh, what's a great way to make money? We should bring fur back. We could make it cool again, because it's been gone, people forgot about it. And from a capitalist standpoint, from a marketing standpoint, and from a sales standpoint, when there's a vacuum for something, it's a good opportunity for you to jump into that void to sell the thing. And so the upside to this that I've experienced is every time someone jumps back in to fill the void and, oh, here we have a little bit of fur again, it doesn't quite come back as strong. It wasn't like it was. And then it may be around for a little bit, but, that will fall out again. And then someone will again say, oh, look, there's a void. Let's sell some fur. So it will peek its head back up. And I think the best that I can hope for is that stuff like the use of animal fur and animal products in popular clothing is that every time it peeks its head up, it's less and less, until finally someone comes out with new fur boots and 100% of the world population looks at that person and says, "You're gross. Those are gross. That's a bad idea." And they don't sell a single boot. So I hope that through our efforts and through the efforts of all vegans and all activists, that we continue to keep the pressure on capitalists and let them know, you think it's a good idea to launch this fur product or this animal product because you see a hole in the market that needs to be filled. But eventually, I hope they learn that they don't have the real audience for it. The audience is educating themselves. They're watching Dominion. They're having life-changing events where they say, wait, I love animals. I don't want to eat them or wear them. What am I doing? That's ridiculous. And so I hope that the consumer market continues to evolve, and therefore the capitalists eventually learn the lesson that they don't need to keep bringing back these products every time we see a dip.
Yeah, and there's so many alternatives, and Ace and you both talked about brands and making a wise decision around brands, and like really supporting them. Jane, do you have any comments on this?
Yes. First of all, let's give a shout out to PETA for being the most impactful organization to eliminate fur. Just yesterday, I signed a petition and sent a letter that PETA sent me via email to get the Sundance Film Festival to completely detach from Canada Goose. PETA has done more on this issue than all the other organizations combined. So let's give a shout out to PETA for being the most effective organization on this issue. Michael Kors, who had really fought against giving up fur, who was subject to innumerable pleas and letters and petitions. Well, ultimately, when he walked out with Dan Matthews at PETA, it was to announce that he was giving up fur. So, yes, I think it's very important for us to support organizations that are doing really important work. Now, the pandemic has had an impact on the fur industry because the mutations that were discovered in mink in Denmark resulted in the massacre of approximately 17 million mink in Denmark alone. And we had on Jane Unchained an interview with Casper Hilt, who's an amazing activist who went and took video of this horrific massacre of these mink. And he had this video of mink, giant dumpsters filled with these bloodied mink. It was the most disgusting thing I've ever seen. And again, the mainstream media, not a word about the suffering of these animals. Their main headline is, oh, the mink industry is going to be impacted by this. And then immediately mink farmers came out of the woodwork, and there were profiles of poor mink farmers who've lost their income. Jobs are always used as an excuse to justify exploitation. And sadly, the answer of the governments around the world and international organizations wasn't, let's get rid of fur once and for all. Nobody needs it. It's a completely useless industry that is horrifically cruel. No, their answer was, let's increase biosecurity at fur farms. And this is the insanity of our culture. But if we are here today to come up with a solution, we all agree. We're all on the same page. It's how do we get these power brokers, these people who are at the juncture of what the masses get to hear. How do we flip their switch? Because every time somebody in power wakes up and has that light bulb moment and starts realizing we don't need to eat animals, we don't need to wear animals, we don't need to experiment on animals, there's a way around it. That person, if they have a lot of stature, can really make a difference. So getting back to the Dominion Challenge, I've looked at media and tried to see, well, what is effective? I think one of the most effective, and I'm not talking about politics right now, I'm talking about templates for us to use, is the Lincoln Project. The Lincoln Project was a group of Republicans that decided that they didn't like what was happening with the prior administration, and they started putting together these really dynamic ads taking people down and, you know, speaking truth to power. And I think we could do something like that. I remember, for example, I do admire Rachel Maddow on MSNBC. I watch her all the time. I think she's brilliant in many, many ways, an incredible communicator. And at one point she said after a Thanksgiving a couple of years ago, well, we got a turkey that was too big to fit in the oven, and so we put it on the grill. And you know what? Necessity is the mother of invention. It was so delicious. We're going to do this every year. So it infuriated me because she should know better. It's a leading cause. It's at least a leading cause, but arguably, according to a new white paper by Dr. Silas Rao, which I also sent her, the leading cause of climate change, habitat destruction, wildlife extinction, human world hunger, preventable human disease like heart disease and cancer, water pollution, you know, everything, the pandemics, all of these problems stem. So if this woman is so smart that she can understand the nuances of the Mueller investigation and all sorts of intricacies happening on Capitol Hill, how can she get that basic information that this is something that we should certainly not shill for at the very least, and we should look at critically? So we did a video on Jane Unchained. We had 6 people talking to the camera and say, hey, Rachel, you know, you probably know at this point that animal agriculture is horribly cruel, that these animals never get to see the light of day, that it's a leading cause of climate change, world hunger. We laid it all out respectfully and politely and included clips of her saying, oh, the turkey was so big, we had to put it on the grill. It was delicious. And it wasn't a nasty video, but it did speak directly to her. We put it up, and I think she saw it. I do believe she saw it. Has that influenced her? I have no idea, but we do have to give these celebrities credit when credit is due. When the pandemic erupted and slaughterhouses became COVID-19 hotspots, she was on the forefront of reporting on the problems at the slaughterhouses, not in reference to the suffering of the animals, but in reference to the suffering of the slaughterhouse workers and the connection to, for example, environmental racism and other issues. I don't know if that answered your question.
No, you did. And I think something that most people are not aware of, speaking of slaughterhouse workers, is they don't have the same union rights. You know, they're exposed to a lot of, you know, violence and damage themselves. They're not in a good work environment. And I think, you know, if anybody wants to really speak about slaughterhouse workers, I think what they should really be concerned about is having alternative job opportunities for them and not protecting, you know, the kind of, you know, violent work environment that they have. That's what I would say on this. And it's so uncalled for, you know, like when it comes to like massacre of minks and just like, you know, celebrating, you know, a turkey. I mean, it's just unnecessary, I would say. Speaking of minks, Ace has a really good news from the Scandinavian region. Ace, did you want to mention that?
Yeah, actually, I'm like that. I've signed every petition I ever can find, you know, that cross my path. And when we're talking about this with minks, I can tell you, oh my God, they've been, you know, up, down, they're closing, they're open, you know, and like Jane said before, it's like they get paid, or the government go in or whatever, or I need my work, you know, and they work on this farm. Yeah, do something else. I mean, but today they actually quit it. The government went in, and now 2021, there were so many people that signed this and complain about all these kinds of horrible things that those animals are raised up in and brought up in these cages. Is horrible. It's like, you cannot even imagine when you know, we know, but you know, other people have no idea what those where they're brought up in. So today, actually, 2021, the mink farm are gone forever in Sweden. And it was big news just for maybe 3-4 days ago. I saw it on the headlines. So finally, I said, how many years have I not signed this kind of papers or mails or whatever it was? I'm not walking on the streets, but I signed. And I can just say, wow, this was a big, goal, and it was a big win for us. And I cannot see the point having and I know I've been talking with Samita with this, because when you look at when it comes to clothes and so on, you cannot see the difference, and you can hardly feel the difference anymore. The technique when it comes to fabric and to leather and to do this kind of artificial things today to create shoes or whatever you want to do in fashion is so amazing. I mean,
I know.
Why do
like
we?
What we're wearing.
You get so many beautiful. I'm a designer myself. I love to go in the fabric shops. It's like heaven for me. And when I go to this area, when they call it fur, but it's amazing. I mean, it's like, why do you ever have to look at something else? I cannot even understand it. But for me, when this kind of big news come with the mink farm, because that's what we're talking about now, I'm so happy about it. I'm so relieved. So I hope it will spread, to other parts in the world where they have it, and it will shut down for good. That's for
I mean, it is spreading. I mean, I got to know about the news from you, Ace. So I think, so I think the more we have, these friendly conversations and we share the information with others, it's just absolutely fantastic. I realize that, essentially what we're talking about is, beauty. And, we're fighting lookism, and we want to end speciesism. Now, while fighting beauty politics, how can we make sure that, the mass that is actually quite on the side of animals? I mean, so many people, they are animal lovers, so maybe they feel that they don't have a choice, or maybe they didn't get a chance to know about a film like Dominion. How can the mass make a difference just with fashion and style? And I know, the answer to this question for me is yes. You just, you just go for, just vegan fashion, fair trade clothing, and just, use your own aesthetic communication. But how would you address that? To bring that sort of diversity, because, the fashion modeling industry is also like, it's quite, how do I say, it's like homogeneous in so many ways. It's not quite diverse. So how can we make sure that a diverse mass can use these kinds of like fashion and style, if that makes sense?
I think one of the best ways I've found to adopt that initiative into what I work on and what we work on is, as an artist and as an entrepreneur, I feel like you really need to keep that at your foundation, at the core of what you're doing. And I feel like that's what helps humans elevate and truly transform whatever they're working on, whatever someone's passion is, whatever the activism is, whatever the goal is. You really have to be clear about what you're doing or why you're doing it. Like why vegan fashion? Why a conscious model agency? And that's why, when I started LoveLight Models, I named it a conscious model agency and not a vegan model agency, because I wanted people to understand that our motivation behind it was not just about veganism. That's one of the branches of living more consciously. And so that way we needed that because we very much also wanted to discuss all the other things that the industry has done terribly over the last 50, 70 years. It's like diversity. It's like, really? Fashion industry? Come on. Like, it seems morally and ethically like the fashion industry, in terms of its diversity and being inclusive, is just so behind where it could be and where it should be, ethically. And so making sure that you have those ideas, like what are your ideas? What are your values? And do you understand them? And are they truly at the core of your project, of your mission, of your journey? Because if they're at the core, then they will inform all of your steps. And you won't have to have a bullet point or a line item that says, oh yes, be sure to include people of color in your campaign. It's like, that's how the companies that are failing at diversity view diversity. That's how they handle it. That's how it shows up in their thought process. It's like, oh yes, and remember to do this. And for companies like ours and for other activism-based businesses, it really has to be at the core. You're like, no, we're going to be good first. Our agenda, our core value set is let's do things better. And I joke to all the people that I work with and I communicate with, and I say, we're either a conscious business or we aren't. I have no interest in running a model agency. I only have interest in running a conscious model agency. If it's not a conscious business where we support these ideas of like treating people better and treating animals well and like just be better, you can so easily upgrade the way you behave and the way you think and shift your value set to be more inclusive, be more compassionate, and to educate yourself even just a little bit starts to transform your world so easily that from an entrepreneur's standpoint and from like a business standpoint, once you make those your core, it really does inform everything after that. And so I feel like that is the way that I've kind of kept all of those things at the forefront of our efforts. It's like before we do anything, it's like, well, who are we going to include? It's like, well, we want to include everyone. Like who? It's like, and have we left anyone out? And people say, well, what are you doing? I'm like, it doesn't matter what we're doing first. Are we doing it right? Are we doing it well? Are we doing it the way that aligns with our value set? And then once we're like, make sure that we're behaving the way we want to behave, then you can build your thing. Then you can do your thing. But, when it's reversed oftentimes in most kind of capitalist structures. So keeping that value set at the core of your business and your activities really does make issues like diversity and inclusion a lot easier to not just to do, but to communicate to the people you're working with and then further on to the people you hope to reach.
And I'm very proud to say that I'm a part of your organization too. And thank you so much for representing me.
It is my honor. Absolutely my honor.
Your organization really speaks on diversity and inclusion. And while it's supporting beauty, it's also fighting beauty politics and fighting lookism, which is really what we're talking about today. Speaks on all the issues that Mary has brought into the conversation, like, representing people of color and disabled and queer, and having equal representation for men and women of all ages. I just realized that, time is flying, when it comes to fashion and style. Time just flies, and I'm sure we could do so much altogether. We have 10 more minutes. I'm going to ask Mary if she has some pressing questions, because I know we have a lot of questions. We have a lot of comments coming in. Mary, would you like to ask any questions?
Thank you. Oh gosh, I have so many thoughts. It's definitely a challenge, I think, what we're discussing, to balance, like Patrick is saying, with conscious representation, right? And making sure that at the core of what you're doing, you just want to include everybody, but at the same time, working within a capitalist structure that is heavily based on superficial looks, and balancing that. One thing I wanted to bring to the discussion, just because it's been a relevant issue with the Save movement, which, for anyone who doesn't know, the Animal Save movement does vigils outside of slaughterhouses across the world. The idea is to bear witness to the animals who are suffering. And one thing that has always been really important to the Save movement is taking pictures of the animals in the trucks, which is borderline undercover footage, which recently was made illegal. And when we're talking about Dominion, Dominion is heavily undercover footage. And I just wanted to bring to the discussion the importance or non-importance of undercover footage in creating, a message, like a conscious message, trying to push the message of veganism and animal rights out. Is undercover footage important? Do we need it? Jane, I wonder if you wanted to speak on this, since you brought up the footage with the mink. Do you think that undercover footage is crucial to showing the masses the truth? I guess is my question. Thank you.
Jane, I think your microphone is muted.
Thank you. Sorry. It's absolutely crucial. The makers of Dominion should be applauded for just their incredible courage. It's so hard to watch. Imagine putting it together. Imagine collecting the footage and editing it. The enormous agony of doing that. So Chris Delforce and the entire team that did that, they're heroes. And I was on the dominionmovement.com page, and you can download it, and they allow you to use whatever you want. So we could create 5-minute, 3-minute, 2-minute clips and challenge certain people to watch it. I would love to challenge politicians, celebrities, media leaders to watch Dominion and put their face. If something has their face on it, chances are their PR people will let them know that their face has been featured in an ad campaign. So that's one way to get them to look at it. I think we could have a brainstorming session where we try to figure out how could we get the top news anchors, TV hosts, talk show hosts, politicians, senators, members of Congress, big celebrities to watch Dominion. And I think if you did a clip featuring that person with their face and tagged them and then said, hey, do you have the guts to watch this? If you don't have the guts to watch it, then please don't eat these animals. Don't drink their byproducts. Because if you can't even watch it, how dare you consume them? And so I think that would be an interesting marketing campaign.
Thank you, Jane. Ace, did you want to comment on this?
Yeah, when it comes to these footages, I didn't know that they have to stop it, that it's not allowed anymore. I actually didn't know. And for me, it's like, we have to have some tools to get it out. And the pictures and what people see with their own eyes, what actually happened. I used to say like this, we have a huge slaughterhouse where I was raised up. And I used to say, if there were glass walls, no one would eat meat, but because it's lit in the middle of the city almost, the trucks going in. But if they actually have seen what's inside there, you should not eat it, they will never do. So all these kind of photos and video films, I'm They are so brave to do this and to can have the courage to stand there and still fight for it. I'm applauding them. So in some way or another, I hope they can continue, because the picture of an animal that are very capturing to see, and it's, you have to go by people by heart. That's the only way, and videos is very effective on people. They are very hard for them to see, even 5 minutes on this video or this film or other films for that matter, but they want to have it on the plate anyway, you see. And you will see, we have to have more and more of this coming out, I guess, more and more films. You have to continue it, be very consistent with it in some way, because it's like, okay, we're never going to give up. Never. We're going to fight for this forever, for these animals that's standing there, because why? I have friends say, they have for dinner, they have no clue what they eat, and they think they're eating like a stew, whatever is not meat, I say. And the cakes are bring and everything, they eat like never before. And then I said, no, you're having beans like for the whole evening. They have no clue, because they cannot feel the difference. You see, they can't, so it's like, this is like so useless and so horrible. And I don't know what more to say about it, but it's like,
I would say that, I would say that humans have a very strong capacity to create anything they want. Like if we want to recreate a certain form of clothing or food, it's very easy to recreate. And I'm really proud of all those who are taking a step to just be a living example of change and to be the voice, because those that we're standing up for, they're not voiceless, they are silenced. And so being that voice, to use each and every platform that we have, it goes a long way. I think, like Jane said, we need another brainstorming session. This panel just flew by. I can't believe. I have one last question, unless anybody else has any further question or comment. What risk do you take to do this kind of work, and what would you tell your viewers, your readers, your followers to consider when it comes to taking a risk and standing up for the cause that you are standing up for? Patrick, do you want to share some final thought?
It would be my pleasure to share my final thought on that question. As you asked it, I started answering in my head, and I thought, I wish I had a really cool answer. Like, I wish I had like a cool sound clip or something really smart. But my honest reaction, as you asked the question about like what I risk, I thought, well, I started a business that no one wants, like the industry doesn't care. So I'm like, oh, I'm going to make money at doing this conscious agency, and the industry like doesn't care. And so it's difficult to make money. And then even in my efforts on social media, I'm over on Instagram. And then, in the last year, I've just posted so many political activist posts and, everything that became so important in the last year and a half. And I got comments like, I thought this account was going to be about models. And I'm like, well, it is. But right now it's about politics, because that affects models. This is like, we're a conscious brand. Like, if you can't join us in conversations about what's important, just because it might not fit in your narrow view of what we are, it's like you're really kind of missing the initial point in the first place. But please, by all means, stick with us, listen, learn a little something maybe. And we lost a lot of followers that were hopefully they just wanted to hear either cool vegan recipes or just look at beautiful people. And I'm like, that's okay. They can, there's plenty of that on the internet for them. And so, like I said, I wish I had a cooler answer, but I believe all that I've risked so far in starting this agency is my time and effort, and in starting a business and a project that is difficult and not popular yet enough to financially support itself effectively. You know, it is still a struggle. It's like we are still a tiny boutique entity compared to the industry that exists. So I guess what I'm getting at is, compared to what all the animals go through, I still don't feel like I'm risking or suffering much. It's like, and in an even bigger grand scheme picture, it's like I'm a white male American. It's like I'm not risking much. There's, you know, I'm like, I should be working the hardest at all of this. So yeah, that's my less than inspiring response, but it's my honest.
That was really honest. Yeah, and I read all your messages on Instagram, and really and truly what you were doing, you were enabling role models, and that's what fashion modeling should be all about, you know, enabling role models and giving a voice, which is what you did. You know, you talked about Black Lives Matters, you know, you talked about LGBTQ, and they were so timely. So that's what's needed, and the strong following that you have, I think they really appreciate that. Mary, Ace, did you want to?
One quick
Yes.
little note. Earlier, Ace, you used a phrase when you were speaking where you said, you know, people look up to them. And generally, that's kind of what celebrity is all about. And there's this thing that pops up on social media every once in a while, and it's this little meme, and it says, "Stop making stupid people famous." And every time I see that meme, it just makes me so happy, because I'm like, oh, yeah, let's do that. And I've kind of always felt like this agency is like a little bait and switch kind of tactic, where mainstream culture wants to see beautiful, sexy people in awesome clothing. And I'm like, okay, well, let's give them that, but with a little more substance. And it's like kind of also what you were talking about when you feed regular people vegan food and they can't even tell the difference. It's like, I hope to do the same thing. It's like, let's give young people these heroes that initially they, you know, worship for all the regular reasons, but then they accidentally find out, oh, like Samita has a PhD. Oh, Ace is vegan. It's like, oh, these people are like educated, activists, empowered, kind, compassionate humans that are doing smart things, and not just like drama after drama of like, you know, ego meltdowns on the internet. And so I'm really honored to help people, you know, shift their values, shift their perspectives, and try and turn them into conscious celebrities, you know, heroes worth, you know, watching. So thank you.
It's part of our, yeah, no, I mean, I think you said it very well. I wouldn't say it any better. I think, you know, we are part of a larger movement to realize, to recognize role models as celebrity activists, because I think they have the power to be heroes, you know, for themselves and for them and for all. It's just a matter of equipping ourselves with the skills and the knowledge that we require, and we're doing it together. If it weren't for my friends and my colleagues, I wouldn't be here speaking in the same capacity. I mean, I learned about human rights, animal rights from my friends and from my colleagues. It wasn't school or university teaching me, but it was the journey of doing research that enabled me to learn and to share, and I'm still learning so much. Ace, would you like to share your final thoughts on what kind of risk do you take, and what would you tell your followers when it comes to taking risk and standing up?
Yeah, I don't think I have so much to lose. I used to say I've done my part when it comes to the model industry. I do my things that I want to do. If they don't like me, they don't want to book me. I don't care. I'm like that. They can't buy me either. So it doesn't matter what kind of contract they come with. I will not take it. I'm sorry. So that's the way I work. And I I want to reach out to the young people. I want them to feel and and I see also a lot of young people, they actually go to this and start to eat vegan, and then they search for the vegan cafes or restaurants. I hear it more and more. It's getting, it spreads. So for me, it's like the future. And can you just be some kind of, call it like hero, and someone they look up to and say, okay, I mean, she's 50 and eat plant-based and be healthy and have a lot of energy. And you can compete with anyone that are half your age, because that's why I do, even if I lift in weights or if I go to a beauty pageant that are half my age, I still have the chance, because it's lifestyle you have, and it have a huge impact on your body, on your health. If you have any issues when it comes to, diseases and so on. So, no, I would just say I focused on the young people and try to reach out to them in any form I can. And that's my last sentence I would have. And it was a pleasure to be around you and to speak to you all. And I hope we get more time some other time. Yeah.
Mary, did you want to say any last word?
Yeah, actually, I want to thank everyone for being here, of course. You all gave amazing answers, insightful answers, and I think definitely gave the audience and myself a lot to think about. But I did, since we're, talking about ultimately how do we reach the public, how do we reach the non-vegan people, especially the non-vegan young people like Ace is talking about. And I think the idea that Jane came up with was really fabulous. The idea of creating clips and then directly asking people to watch them. And I think we do need to use all the tools available to us, whether it's undercover footage or fashion. And I think the more different vegans we see, the more people are going to see themselves in others. And like Patrick said, doing the work for marginalized people and like trying to get more vegans of color in the mainstream will help young people of color go, okay, this movement is for me. Because I have heard from disabled people who say, well, there's no other disabled people in the movement. It doesn't fit, but the more diverse representation we have, I think the more we can reach those young people and they'll see themselves in, these vegans. So I think using every single tool that we were talking about today to reach the masses, to reach celebrities, I think we've come up with some really interesting ideas of how to push the idea of animal rights and animal as people. I mean, that's really what we're talking about here, is that they are people. And like Samita said, they have been silenced. And what can we do to give them, to project their voices? And I think you've all given fabulous answers. So I'm just going to say thank you again. I will leave it to Samita to close if you would like to. Yeah.
The hardest part.
Yeah, I'll leave you the hardest part. There you go.
Well, the good news is, and there's always a good news, we're coming back next Sunday. And next Sunday, we're speaking with Dr. Anita Krajnc, who is the founder of the SAVE movement. And it's going to be such a wonderful honor and privilege to hear her speaking. So we're going to continue this conversation with some closing notes from her. And we're going to have a rising Bollywood star from Bombay. That's going to be just wonderful. So please do follow us, join our conversations. We're going to continue conversations on Instagram, on Twitter. Do sign up with our listserv, and we're looking forward to having you back with us. Thank you so much for joining, and have a fantastic week ahead. I'm going to let you go. You're going to hear from us very soon. Thank you so much, Patrick, Ace, Mary, and